They tried to erase you. They tried to silence your voice, break your spirit, distort your history, and steal your name from the scrolls of time. But how do you erase a people whose identity is written not just in the sands of time, but in the divine will of the Most High God? The world has forgotten what God remembers. The colonizer rewrote the map, but they couldn't rewrite your bloodline. The invaders took land, stole culture, twisted the truth, but they couldn't destroy the spirit of a chosen people. The Igbo are not just a tribe. The Igbo are a prophecy, a living remnant of a scattered people who carry the ancient codes of resilience, brilliance, and divine favor. They called you primitive, but you were practicing democracy while Europe was still in chains. They called you idolaters, but your traditions mirrored the sacred principles of Abraham and Moses. They said you were cursed, but in truth, you are set apart. You can't erase a people who survived genocide and still sing. You can't erase a people who walk through colonization and still rise. You can't erase a people who lose everything and yet never forget who they are, because every attempt to erase the Igbo has only etched their truth deeper into history. From the Biafran War to the slave ships, from exile to silence, each wound became a witness, each scar a scripture. And now the world is awakening. The dry bones are rattling. The scroll is unrolling. The real story is returning. And the Igbo are standing once again, not just as survivors, but as signs of prophecy fulfilled. No matter how many lies they print, no matter how many maps they redraw, no matter how many names they steal, you can't erase what God has chosen. You can't silence what heaven has declared. And you can never bury the truth when it is protected by fire. The Igbo people are not forgotten. They are rising, because when God writes your name in His book, no empire, no weapon, no lie can blot it out. The world must know you can't erase a people chosen by God. The Igbo people of Nigeria carry within them a mystery so profound that even centuries of colonization, forced conversion, and historical distortion could not erase it. Beneath the surface of their customs, language, and ancestral memory lies a striking resemblance to the ancient Israelites, not simply in the outer garments of culture, but in the very fabric of covenant. This connection isn't a new conspiracy or a modern invention. It's a truth that is echoed through generations, spoken in the rituals of the elders, whispered in the names of the children, and etched in the hearts of those who still remember who they are. The Igbo have always known that their story began long before colonizers drew borders on a map. Their reverence for one supreme God, Chukwu Okike Abiyama, is not a borrowed belief, it is a divine instinct. Their ancient understanding of clean and unclean foods, circumcision on the 8th day, the sacredness of the 7th day, and the presence of altars, priests, and purification rites are not random cultural parallels. They are remnants of a spiritual legacy too old to be copied and too divine to be dismissed. Even their village governance systems reflect the structure of ancient Israelite tribes, decentralized, elder-led, and rooted in community law. Their names speak volumes. Names like Chukwudi, Ifeanyi, and Nenamdi are not just linguistic expressions, but theological affirmations. Every name a declaration of God's power, presence, and sovereignty. Much like the names found in the Hebrew Bible, Igbo names carry meaning, memory, and mission. This is not coincidence. It is continuity. History tried to bury these connections. Colonial scholars labeled Igbo spirituality as primitive, demonized their deities, and mocked their rituals. Missionaries saw their traditions not as sacred echoes, but as heathen resistance. But even through centuries of Christianization and Islamic expansion, the deeper truths survive, because you can Christianize a people, but you cannot erase a covenant. God's mark goes deeper than religion. It lives in the bloodline. It speaks through the suffering. It rises in the resilience. The transatlantic slave trade scattered Igbo descendants across the world, just as the Israelites were scattered in ancient times. And like their Hebrew counterparts, the Igbo retained their identity in fragments, hidden in songs, dances, oral traditions, and spiritual longing. Every attempt to erase them only confirmed their resemblance to the biblical narrative: enslaved, exiled, but never forgotten, rejected by men, yet remembered by God. Today, as DNA tests confirm Hebrew links and scholars revisit suppressed archives, the world begins to wake up to what the ancestors already knew. The Igbo people are not just Africans, they are a living echo of a sacred story. Not merely cultural cousins to Israel, but covenant kin, a remnant rising, a people preserved, a testimony that even when history forgets, heaven remembers. From the massacre of Biafra to the scars left by the transatlantic slave trade, the story of the Igbo people is written in struggle, but also in survival. Every attempt to destroy them has echoed something far deeper than political conflict or tribal tension. It is spiritual. It is prophetic. It is the ancient pattern of how chosen people are treated when the world fears their purpose. Just as the Israelites were enslaved in Egypt, hunted by empires and scattered among nations, so too have the Igbo faced battles that mark them as more than just another ethnic group. They are a divine remnant, and history proves. The Biafran War was more than a civil conflict. It was an act of spiritual warfare. Over 3 million Igbo men, women, and children were starved, bombed, and slaughtered in a campaign that the world watched in silence. But why such fierce hatred against a peaceful, industrious, and spiritually rooted people? Because whenever a group is chosen by God, they are marked not just for blessing, but for opposition. Chosen people carry light, and darkness always tries to extinguish that light. Biafra was not just a political declaration, it was a cry of identity, a call to remembrance. And in the blood of Biafra, a prophecy bled. It stretches back to the days of colonial conquest, when British invaders tried to dismantle the Igbo way of life. Their decentralized, spiritually empowered communities were labeled primitive. Their leaders were exiled or executed. Their gods were demonized. Their unity was fractured. The Igbo were punished for refusing to bow because chosen people don't conform. They remember. And because they remember, they must be silenced. Yet they kept rising. And it reaches even further back to the slave ship. The Igbo were among the most heavily targeted in the transatlantic slave trade. Why? Because those who carried the flame of divine ancestry were seen as the greatest threat. These were not just Africans. They were keepers of ancient law, singers of sacred songs, bearers of divine name. Their resilience terrified their captors. Their suicides, their resistance, their refusal to be broken even in chains. These were signs of a people who knew that bondage on earth could never erase favor from heaven. All of this was not coincidence. It was confirmation. Every attack, every exile, every silence forced upon them was the same pattern seen in Scripture. Chosen people are not only blessed, they are tried, tested, and often rejected by the world. The Israelites had Egypt, Babylon, Rome, The Igbo had Britain, Nigeria, and global silence. But just as